Have you heard that Donald Trump has officially begun the trade war with China? Just recently, he put 10% tariffs on Chinese products, starting what he might not be able to finish. That's because Chinese President Xi Jinping already warned Trump that there would be no winner in this trade war, hinting at the harsh way China will strike back. And now, Trump has made his first move, which seems irreversible. But how is China planning to answer to send a clear message that this time, China will show that Trump's tariffs were a mistake? How has Xi Jinping armed China, ensuring that only the United States is the one to lose in the trade war? In this video, let's know about the whole news story. Donald Trump has officially reignited a trade war with China, launching a fresh round of 10% tariffs on Chinese goods. But that's a move that could have catastrophic consequences for the US economy. Trump has long used tariffs as a political tool, portraying himself as a strongman who can force China into submission. But this time, his economic gamble is doomed to fail. That's because China, under President Xi Jinping, has spent years preparing for this moment. Beijing has strategically diversified its economy, strengthened domestic industries, built alternative trade partnerships, and reduced its reliance on the US. Therefore, instead of being caught off guard like in 2018, China is now positioned to strike back in ways that will hurt the United States far more than any tariff could harm China. Hence, the question is not if China will retaliate, but how devastating its response will be. Trump assumes that China's response will be simple and predictable, perhaps with a standard tit-for-tat tariff retaliation. But President Xi Jinping has no intention of playing by Trump's rules. Instead of engaging in a straightforward tariff exchange, China is expected to launch a well-calculated, multi-layered counterattack that will inflict serious economic pain on the United States, while shielding China from major damage. One of China's most effective strategies in previous trade disputes has been targeting American agriculture, a sector that relies heavily on exports to China and is a crucial pillar of Trump's voter base in the Midwest. During the last trade war, China immediately slashed its imports of US farm products, leaving farmers in Iowa, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and other swing states struggling to stay afloat. The economic devastation was so severe that Trump had to issue billions of dollars in bailouts to keep farmers from going bankrupt, a bailout he may not be able to afford this time. But China has learned from that experience and is now permanently reducing its reliance on American agriculture, making it easier than ever to cut off US farmers without harming its own economy. Instead of depending on US exports, China has been expanding trade deals with Brazil, Argentina, and Russia, allowing it to replace American farm products overnight. If China responds by halting purchases of US soybeans, pork, beef, corn, and wheat, the consequences for Trump's voter base will be catastrophic. Soybean farmers, once heavily dependent on Chinese buyers, would see their prices plummet as China shifts entirely to Brazil. Pork and beef producers would face massive oversupply problems, driving down prices and putting meat processing plants in serious financial distress. Corn and wheat farmers would take a direct hit, as China now has multiple alternative suppliers and no longer needs American grain. If this happens, Trump will once again be forced to issue costly bailouts, but the damage may already be done. Many farmers who supported him in 2016 and 2020 may start questioning whether his trade war is worth the cost. But things don't end here. While Trump is focused on tariffs, China has an economic weapon far more devastating. This is its dominance over rare earth metals, which are essential for everything from smartphones and electric vehicles to advanced military technology and semiconductor production. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Africa's geopolitics, economy, and changing landscape. Let's continue now. China currently controls over 70% of the world's rare earth metal supply and processes nearly 90% of these critical materials. If China imposes export restrictions or an outright ban on rare earth shipments to the US, the American economy would feel the effects almost immediately. The consequences of such a move would be far-reaching. Tech giants like Apple, Tesla, and Intel would struggle to secure the materials needed for production, leading to supply shortages, skyrocketing costs, and declining profits. The US military-industrial complex would also be hit hard because fighter jets, guided missiles, and other high-tech weaponry depend on rare earth metals, making them essential for national security. Without access to these materials, the Pentagon would be forced to scramble for alternative suppliers, a process that could take years. Beyond that, major American manufacturers like Boeing and General Electric rely on rare earth metals for aerospace engineering, medical equipment, and various industrial applications. A ban on rare earth exports would cripple these industries, leading to job losses, economic instability, and a ripple effect across the entire US economy. Furthermore, while Trump's tariffs aim to punish Chinese exports, he seems to forget that many major American corporations rely on China for both revenue and manufacturing. If China tightens regulations, launches antitrust investigations, or encourages consumer boycotts against US brands, it could inflict massive financial losses on American businesses, forcing them to lobby against Trump's trade war. Tesla, Apple, General Motors, Starbucks, and McDonald's all generate billions of dollars in revenue from China. If Beijing restricts their market access, imposes licensing barriers, or promotes domestic alternatives, these corporations would suffer significant losses. For example, China could promote local electric vehicle makers like BYD over Tesla, cutting into Tesla's Chinese sales. Apple's iPhones, which are both manufactured and sold in China, could face regulatory challenges or consumer boycotts, threatening Apple's bottom line. General Motors and Ford, both heavily invested in China's auto market, could see a sharp decline in sales if China shifts consumer preference toward domestic brands. If American businesses start losing money in China, they will pressure Trump to end the trade war, just as they did in 2018. Furthermore, Trump's tariffs aren't just affecting consumer goods. He has also threatened Taiwan with semiconductor tariffs, a move that could backfire spectacularly by pushing China to accelerate its own semiconductor industry while destabilizing US supply chains. Unlike previous trade wars, China is no longer entirely dependent on American chips. Over the last decade, Beijing has poured billions into its own semiconductor industry, rapidly closing the technology gap between Chinese and Western chip makers. If Trump escalates the trade war, China has several ways to cripple America's tech dominance. First, China can fast-track domestic chip makers like SMIC and Huawei, pouring even more investment into their R&D to eliminate reliance on US semiconductor technology. If China achieves semiconductor independence faster than expected, it would weaken America's leverage in the long run. Second, China could pressure Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, the world's leading chip supplier, which produces chips for Apple, Qualcomm, and NVIDIA. If China disrupts Taiwan's chip supply chains or puts political pressure on TSMC, it could cripple the American tech industry overnight. If China takes these steps, Trump's attempt to punish China will backfire horribly, leaving the US tech industry struggling to recover. Trump thinks he can bully China into submission with tariffs, but Beijing is playing a much bigger game. Instead of simply raising tariffs, China is strategically arming itself with economic weapons that will cripple key American industries. Xi Jinping is not reacting impulsively to Trump. He has been preparing for this moment for years. Beijing has built global trade partnerships, diversified its economy, and developed countermeasures that will inflict far greater damage on the US than any tariff ever could. If Trump pushes forward with his reckless trade war, China will strike back harder than ever before. And this time, it won't be China suffering the most. It will be American businesses, farmers, tech companies, and consumers who will pay the price. Higher tariffs mean higher prices on electronics, clothing, and household goods, which will hit the wallets of everyday Americans. The US economy remains deeply dependent on China, and supply chains cannot be rewritten overnight. China, on the other hand, has been reducing its reliance on the US for years, making it far less vulnerable than before. Trump may talk tough on China, but this trade war is one he cannot win. China has spent years diversifying its economy, building trade partnerships, and reducing reliance on US imports. Now it holds the real leverage. It can cripple American industries with rare earth bans, semiconductor restrictions, and agricultural blockades. What do you think? Will China impose harsher tariffs on the US? Do you feel that if China adopts a solid and powerful strategy to strike back, Trump will be forced to remove tariffs? In the comments section right below, share your thoughts on what China should immediately do now. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: African politics, economy, and increasing power. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.
Tell us what you think in the comment section. Like and share the video, and subscribe so that you don't miss any of our African videos. It's the best way to support us.